Hello, I'm Scott Simmons, and I'm looking forward to talking with you a bit about our recent archaeological research in San Pedro Town on Ambergris Caye. But before I do, I just want to thank the organizers for inviting me and for organizing this fourth Culture Symposium. So today I'll be presenting the results of several seasons of fieldwork at the San Pedro site conducted by the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Work has revealed evidence of late postclassic period Maya occupation, probably 15th to early 16th century, as well as 19th and 20th century use of the site by caste war refugees who settled the area that's now San Pedro. So I'm going to talk about both of these periods of occupation today. The San Pedro site is located immediately west of Central Park in the heart of downtown San Pedro. It's one of at least 24 archaeological sites that have been recorded so far on the island, although there are undoubtedly many more. Ground truthing and mapping of sites and other cultural features will hopefully take place on the island next year following a recently completed LiDAR survey. The San Pedro site was first investigated by Doctors David Pendergast and Elizabeth Graham in 1991 and 1993 on the grounds of what was then called the Sands Hotel, owned by Mr. George Parham. It's not clear when the Parham family arrived on Ambergris Caye, but by the end of the 19th century, they were well established on the island. After excavating through 20th and then 19th century deposits, Graham and Pendergast identified hard-packed earth and marl or sascab-like Maya house floors, in which a number of post and pit features, as well as human burials, were found. So that's me standing in the background of this image looking slightly perplexed, as is often the case. Anyway, nearly all of the Maya burials that have been found at the site were ventrally placed with legs flexed, a burial practice observed at several other sites on Ambergris Caye, as well as at Kolha and Lamanai on the mainland of northern Belize. So in spring 2016, I visited the site where I'd worked with Graham and Pendergast in 1993 and saw that the old Sands Hotel was undergoing a major renovation project in which the hotel was becoming a hostel. Unfortunately, construction workers had dug several trash pits into the site, effectively disturbing the historic and late post-classic deposits Pendergast and Graham had identified more than 2 decades earlier. After introducing myself to Miss Maria Parham, the granddaughter of George Parham, I learned of further renovation plans for the property that included extensive permaculture work and the possible construction of a large swimming pool, both of which had a very high potential to disturb the site. So Miss Parham agreed to allow us to conduct salvage excavations there through a UNCW archaeology field school in the following year, 2017. So here I'll begin by discussing the historic occupation of San Pedro Town, then proceed to summarize what we've learned about late post-classic Maya occupation there. A total of 9 trenches measuring between 2.5 to 3 meters squared were excavated over 2 field seasons in 2017 and 2023 by me, co-PI Tracy Mayfield, and UNCW Archaeology Field School students. Revealed historic, modern, and Maya features and abundant artifacts dating from probably the mid 15th to mid 16th centuries through the mid to late 20th century. Yet very little Spanish colonial period material has been found so far. The site appears to have been abandoned by the Maya sometime by the middle of the 16th century at the latest, probably due, at least in part, to near continuous pirate and privateer raids on coastal Maya settlements for food, slaves, and other materials. Excavations at the site revealed that pre-Columbian cultural material was mixed with both modern and 19th century historic artifacts up to around 50 to 65 centimeters below the existing ground surface. Mixed 19th century historic artifacts and late post-classic period Maya materials including well-preserved bone, along with numerous ceramic and lithic artifacts, were found to extend to roughly 65 to 90 centimeters below the existing ground surface. So here, note the ovate biface made of chert from the northern Belize chert-bearing zone, resting inside a whiteware pomade jar in the upper left of this slide. The site itself is situated just around 50 meters from the eastern shore of the island, so the mixing of stratigraphic deposits is almost certainly the result of the numerous hurricanes and tropical storms that have washed across it over the past centuries. Some historic and modern construction activities are also responsible for the mixing of stratigraphic deposits, particularly over the last century or so. In terms of historic material, over 11,250 artifacts were recovered during our two field seasons, including these intact late 19th century patent medicine bottles. Based on archival and other historic research conducted by Dr. Courtney Besaw, the 19th century historic material represents household refuse from caste war refugee families who migrated to Ambergris Caye during the last quarter of the 19th century. Following the late postclassic period, human occupation of Ambergris Caye seems to have been very light. Only small numbers of Spanish colonial artifacts, mostly Maiolica and olive jar fragments, have been recovered during excavations, and 18th century artifacts are almost equally uncommon. The island was not uninhabited, however, as fisher folks from the mainland sailed to the Caye to fish its rich waters during the 18th and 19th centuries. Recolonization of the island began in earnest sometime during the last quarter of the 19th century, and this is when groups of caste war refugees arrived from the Lake Bacalar region of southern Quintana Roo, located only about 55 miles northwest of San Pedro Town. In addition, some Maya families also emigrated from villages farther north, around Tulum in northern Quintana Roo. The majority of historic cultural materials date to between 1830 and 1900, and not surprisingly, the bulk of the assemblages was related to foodways. After plates, bowls, and cups, just over 6% of the ceramic artifacts were from chamber pots. You can see one of these on the left here. Mayfield interprets the wide variety of forms, colors, and designs seen in the historic ceramic assemblage as representing refuse from multiple early San Pedrano households, rather than from just a single household. In other words, our excavations on the grounds of the old Sands Hotel, which became the Hostel La Vista, may have uncovered portions of a communal dump for household refuse. A wide variety of types of ceramics were recovered, including hand-painted pearlware, such as the pieces shown on the left image, along with Chinese export porcelain, transfer print, and sponge-decorated white wares, and yellow and annular wares. Glass artifacts included numerous liquor bottles, tumblers, and patent medicine bottles, while metal artifacts included a variety of nail types, hardware such as door and furniture hinges, and belt buckles seen in the slide on the right. The mean ceramic date for historic pottery from all trenches combined was 1893, while the mean production date for glassware recovered was also 1893. Although no historic features were identified during excavations, what is very clear is that the earliest founders of what became San Pedro Town had access to an incredibly diverse range of consumer items, and that the most common of these, ceramic and glass objects, had originated from many different parts of the world, including North America, Europe, and Asia. Beneath the refuse of 19th and 20th century occupation, we encountered largely intact late postclassic period Maya deposits, including the remains of house floors, subfloor pit features, human remains, and numerous ceramic and lithic artifacts. The majority of the latter were obsidian blades and blade fragments. Largely undisturbed late postclassic Maya midden was found beginning at about 80 to 90 centimeters below the ground surface, and Maya house floors were encountered between about 90 and 100 centimeters below the existing ground surface. So we saw multiple reflooring episodes in several trenches, and dark gray-black midden with well-preserved faunal material was often found sandwiched between these floors. Not surprisingly, the majority of faunal remains were fish bones, although preliminary analyses by Mayfield indicates that different terrestrial animals, including deer, peccary, dog, and a wide variety of birds and small mammals, were consumed by the late postclassic Maya of San Pedro. Fish species inhabiting deepwater environments, along with those commonly found within the reef and in lagoon shallows, were represented in the faunal assemblage, along with crocodile, turtle, and manatee. In addition, hundreds of conch shells and shell fragments were also recovered. Dr. Jim Amers studied the 11,300 plus Maya ceramics recovered from the site in 2017 and last year. His study has provided the basis for dating Maya occupation of the site to the late postclassic period, as red Pail group pottery comprised the overwhelming majority of Maya pottery found at the site, including these palmul incised vessel fragments. Hubelna unslipped and Navula unslipped sherds comprise the other main ceramic types. Excavations at the San Pedro site yielded 4 intact or nearly whole Maya vessels, including this very small red pail jar. A small number of Poso unslipped sherds were also identified by Amers, and these spanned the early to late post-classic periods. And less than 10 sherds were identified as classic period vessel fragments. Sherds of the red Pail group or Tulum red dominate the ceramic assemblage, as they do at a number of other coastal sites in Belize and Quintana Roo. Their presence suggests to Amers and Graham northern and coastal trade connections for the San Pedro Maya. Given the high densities of fish bones in midden deposits, it's not terribly surprising that fish net or line weights were recovered in those same contexts, along with lesser numbers of ceramic spindle whorls. Interestingly, several of these net or line sinkers, called pesas, appeared to have been made from Belize group ash-tempered sherds, suggesting coastal connections to the mainland, specifically the Belize River Valley. Dr. James Stemp studied the 310 chert and chalcedony pieces, along with the 424 obsidian blades and blade fragments that make up the lithic assemblage from our 2 field seasons at the site. His visual inspection suggests that over 3/4 of the obsidian blades came from the Ixtepeque source, while the remaining pieces were either from El Chayal or an indeterminate source or sources. Most of the whole blades and proximal blade pieces had ground or peck striking platforms, which, along with the Ixtepeque source identification, is consistent with observations made on obsidian from other late post-classic Maya contexts. The majority of chert flakes and tools were made from chert from the northern Belize chert-bearing zone. Thin bifaces such as the losange, lenticular, and laurel leaf forms shown here are identical to those made during early and middle post-classic times at the Colha workshops. The San Pedro Maya evidently curated and repaired or recycled these, as evidenced by resharpening on many and conversion of some bifaces into pounding tools or hammer stones. At least some of these finely made bifaces were likely used for spearfishing and manatee hunting. So walking through San Pedro's Central Park today, it's difficult to imagine what that area would have looked like 150 years ago, when the resident population of the island was a fraction of what it is now, and when one would have only seen a series of small wood-framed buildings that housed Caste War refugees from Yucatan. It's equally challenging to envision small clusters of pole and thatch domestic buildings strung out along the beach ridge that made up the Maya community that existed around 500 years ago. Yet archaeological investigations in what is now a busy urban environment have revealed not only the presence of these early San Pedranos, but certain details of their daily lives, including some of the ways they adapted to life on Belize's largest barrier island. In terms of its pre-Columbian past, the San Pedro site is unique in that it is one of very few late post-classic Maya period sites that have been identified and investigated archaeologically along the coast of Belize. Our work there has revealed that in the last century and a half or so before Spanish contact, the San Pedro Maya lived in pole and thatch houses with either hard-packed sand or sascab-like floors. Along with ceramic storage vessels, they laid their dead under their house floors, continuing a long-standing pre-Columbian Maya practice. They also enjoyed access to a wide variety of aquatic and terrestrial foods, as well as stone tools made from chert from the northern Belize area and obsidian from the Guatemalan highlands. After a period of at least 4 centuries, the area that eventually became San Pedro Town was recolonized by Caste War refugees from the Lake Bacalar and Tulum areas of Quintana Roo. These families had access to a wide range of consumer goods from distant parts of the world, including North America, Asia, and Europe. They lived in elevated wood frame houses and enjoyed aquatic foods from the Caribbean and the shallow waters on the west side of the island, along with a variety of meats from domesticated animals such as cow, pig, and turkey. Many of the descendants of these refugee families still reside on Ambergris Caye today. So the Parham family has recently sold the property on which the San Pedro site is located, making it unclear what will happen to the remains of these first San Pedranos. What is clear is that the earliest Maya, as well as the later residents of what became San Pedro Town, were well adapted to life along the coast of northern Belize. Thank you.